Hi guys, welcome along to a rainy Gatwick. We're here on stand 136, loaded up in the PMDG and ready to fly down to Palma, Mallorca as Tomjet 80 Mike. This video is going to be looking at the
Gatwick Ground, United 236, radio check.
I'll just turn the volume down on that a little bit.
Radio check, read the
there we go. This is going to be looking at the setup and planning and departure stages with a view to being on VATSIM. So we're at Gatwick. We've currently got ground and approach online. So all being well, we'll get underway. We should have some coverage for our departure. Now, it's worth noting at this point that if you haven't checked out previous videos on the channel, you may just I may be skipping over stuff that I've covered already, like using SimBrief to set up the flight plan and stuff like that, and using ActiveSky to get the weather into the sim. So it's worth, if you're not sure on any of that stuff, just going back and having a look over that before you dive into this video, because it will skirt around some of the stuff on the assumption that you've already seen some of those tutorial videos. So with that in mind, let's get into the aircraft. So just to recap, we're using Chase Plane for our in-cockpit views. We've got vPilot running to connect us to the VATSIM network. We've got ActiveSky running to bring the weather into the sim, and we've got SimBrief for the chart for the flight plan, Navigraph for the charts. So first thing we need to do then, we're on stand. And we've got the aircraft set up in a state ready to load up the flight plan, the FMC. So we're not starting from cold and dark, and you'll just want to have a look at previous videos where I've talked about getting a panel state saved up, ready to go. It'll be relevant to whatever type of aircraft you're flying, whether it's the Airbus or the PMDG or whatever. So we're in the aircraft, and then we need to look at the weather first of all. So we've got ActiveSky going. I don't think there's any ATIS. So there is an ATIS online now, that's cool. So we'll go and grab that in a second. But just to briefly look, we've got the surface winds of 240 at 7, temperature's 16, visibility is down to 8,000 metres with moderate precip, which you can see happening. So we have a wet runway for departure, QNH 1014. So with that in mind, we can just have a quick look at vPilot. We're already connected, the flight plan's filed. And we have ATIS, ground and approach. So we'll need to go over to ATIS first of all. We go down to radio panel there, and we need to tune in the ATIS on 134 decimal 2. So 134 decimal 2. As always, I've got the laptop next to me with a notepad just ready to go, so I can write down all the information like the ATIS and the clearance and taxi instructions and stuff. That's really worthwhile doing. So we've dialed that in on standby. We can transfer it across, and we should get the tone. And we shall see. 3422. That'll be right. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you'll have heard some of that transmission. Basically, we've got information delta. Every hour there's a new transmission. It's given a code, or anytime there's a significant change, it'll be updated and given a new code. So we're on delta, so echo would be the next one, and the next hour change, and so on and so forth. So we're now talking, we're going to tune to ground on 121.8, and we can pre-select 12682. On standby, so that when we're handed over to director, we can just hit the transfer switch and off we go. So we got QNH 1014 from the information, so we can set that now, make sure our altimeter is calibrated correctly, and then with that in mind we can compose a message to ground to get our clearance. Just try and turn that noise down a bit from there we go. Hopefully that'll turn. If people are using text on vPilot, and it keeps, obviously it sends a little notification through every time someone texts, and it can get a bit irritating. Let's try and turn that down a bit. That's definitely not turned that down. I'll come back to that in a second. Notifications. There we go. Well, apparently you can't actually turn that down, which is a little bit irritating. There must be a way. I'll have to investigate that. So we're going to compose our message to ground, which is going to be who you are, where you are, what you want. So we are Tomjet 80 Mike. We're on stand 136. We've got information Delta QNH 1014, and here in the UK we report the aircraft type as well, which is a 737-800. So we can go ahead and make that call to them, and we can anticipate the sort of call that we're going to get back, which is going to be something like cleared to destination via certain routing, which will be what hopefully what we've filed, which is Bognor is our first waypoint, so we should be cleared hopefully via Bognor or as filed. We're anticipating the Bognor 1 Mike departure, which is which you can see in the routing of the Simbrief flight plan. So we can anticipate that, but he may give us a different one. So just always be prepared that you might not get exactly what you are anticipating, and you may have to sort of amend what you're expecting to hear and what they're going to tell you. So let's give him a call and see what he says. Gatwick Ground, good day. Tomjet 80 Mike on stand 136, information Delta QNH 1014, 737-800, request IFR clearance to Palma, Mallorca.
80 Mike, to Palma, off the 1 activated partner, 7717.
Clear Palma, Mallorca, Bognor 1 X-ray departure 7717, escort for Tomjet 80 Mike, thank you.
Tomjet 80 Mike, correct.
So we're now cleared for the routing we expected via Bognor, but we were cleared a Bognor 1 X-ray departure instead of a Bognor 8 Mike departure, which is what Simbrief offered us. So we just need to take a quick look at the charts, which I'll just open that up on the desktop. So I'll show you how we do that using Navigraph very quickly as I'm loading it up now. So Gatwick charts, just give that a chance to load in the current charts, because obviously we haven't got them there. There's been a revision. They're revised monthly or as and when the revisions come out. There we go. So we want the standard instrument departure, and we want the Bognor 1 X-ray RNAV departure. So if you use that little target there, that'll just lock it into the shortcuts on the right hand side. There we go. So we want the Bognor 1 X-ray off of 26 left. So we load that into the FMC, and we should then, when we come to the departure briefing, just double check that all these restrictions are met in the FMC. So we'll go down to our FMC now and start some planning. So I've done tutorials about the setup, and there's plenty out there about how to actually set up the PMDG, so I won't dwell too much upon it. Suffice to say that we've got the routing to put in first of all, so that's going to be Gatwick to Palma, Mallorca. That can go straight into the company route, and because we're using the Simbrief downloader, it's already put the file in the right folder, put the code in there, and it automatically calls up the flight plan straight away. So we can activate that straight away, go to the departure arrivals, Gatwick departures, 26 left, and we've been cleared the Bognor 1 X-ray departure. Make sure they are both selected. Go to the routing page, the execute light is there, and we can execute that route. Next thing I would always do is to go just to the weather, look ahead to the arrival weather. So we've got winds at 240 at 11 for Palma. So winds from the west. So if we look at Palma, just give that a chance to load up. And look at the charts for Palma. We've got runways on 240 left and right, and I can tell you that we'll be parking most likely on Pier Charlie, so we'll be anticipating a 24 left arrival, which could always change. But in this instance, I don't think there'll be any control online when we get there, so we will plan for a 24 left. So we'll put into the FMC, if we go to the departures and arrivals, go to the arrivals for Palma, and we'll put in our anticipated arrival now, so that it gives VNAV the best chance of planning the top of descent point correctly. So it'll be, if we just double check on the charts here, if we go to the stars, we're coming in from Lores, so we will expect a probably a Lores 1 Romeo, for they are for the run for 6s, so it will be a Lores there we go, that's the one I'm looking for, I would imagine. We can also double check the flight plan actually, so it's offered us the flight plan has offered us a Lores 1 Papa arrival. We'll just go down and double check if there is indeed a Lores 1 Papa on the charts. Oh, there it is. I was looking at it the whole time. The Lores 1 Papa arrival for runway 24 via the Palenza VOR. So that is what we can expect as our arrival routing. So if we pop that in now, it just gives VNAV the best chance of calculating an accurate top of descent point. So that's all in. So we've got the arrival, Lores 1 Papa, the approach, the ILS Zulu for runway 24, transitioning via the Palenza VOR. So that's the point at which we transition from the Lores 1 Papa onto the ILS approach. And then we can execute that. Go to the routing and just go through and make sure we've got no discontinuities, which we don't. So we can go the init ref, or the performance initialization page, and checking from the flight plan, we've got zero fuel weight of 60.8 tons and a block fuel of, that'll be 8,700 kilos. So however you need to load up the aircraft depending on what you're flying, we need to make sure we've got 8,700 kilos of fuel in the aircraft, which we do here. And the zero fuel weight, not in the ground connections at all, goes into the payload. 60.87, so 60.9 tons, 60.9 tons. Obviously this will differ depending on the aircraft you're flying and how it gets put into the aircraft. We need to confirm that we've got all that loaded, so we've got the correct amount of fuel and we've got the correct zero fuel payload weight loaded, so the performance will be what we're expecting on takeoff. So we've got 60.8 tons in the zero fuel weight, so that can go into the performance initialization page under the zero fuel weight. If you remember from previous tutorials, we look at the flight plan for the FinRes, or the final reserve figures of fuel, which is 2.77, so 2.8 tons in this case. That goes into the reserves. Tomjet operating on a cost index of 40, and our filed flight plan is flight level is 350, which goes in there. And then in the 737 we just need to enter some winds. This may not be applicable necessarily to the Airbus and some of the other aircraft, but for accurate departure planning, we just enter the top of climb winds from the flight plan. This can all be found again on the Simbrief flight plan. We've got flight level 350, winds at 223 at 67, 223 at 67 knots. And the ISO deviation, the difference between the standard temperature at that flight level, which is here, and the forecast temperature at that flight level, which is on the flight plan, is 2 degrees warmer. So we enter a 2. If it was colder, we'd enter a minus figure. But there we go. The transition altitude from the ATIS, we were told the transition altitude is of 7,000 feet. Flight level 70, so that goes in here as well, and then that can be executed. The next thing we need to do then is go to our N1 limits page and do some takeoff performance calculations. I'm running this little bit of software called Topper. They do a range of different Boeing calculation devices. So we're going to just take the information from the FMC, so I'll just quickly go back one page actually, just to get the gross weight from that figure there, which is 69.6 tons. So I'll just show you how we do this. We're going from Gatwick on 26 left. The conditions are wet. The wind currently is 240 at 11. 240 at 11. The temperature is 31 degrees, wow. QNH is 1015. Flaps 5 we're planning, air conditioning on, anti-ice off. We've got the right aircraft variant, we're in kilograms. And finally our takeoff weight will be 69.6 tons. 69,600 kilos. Calculate that and it tells us down here. Flaps 5 will give us a selected temperature D rate of 48 degrees, and those would be our V-speeds. They're not always entirely accurate. You go with the V-speeds that the aircraft actually gives you, but for planning purposes, certainly for the selected temperature figure of 48 degrees is what we're looking for. So we pop in 48 degrees here, and you'll watch this figure here. We've currently got no D rate, so we've got 26,000 pounds of thrust available. When we enter 48 degrees, it will reduce the overall thrust that the engine will produce on the takeoff roll. That just means that it's burning slightly less fuel. We're not using as much environmental, making as much environmental impact with the noise, and less stress on the engines. And that was a procedure that all our carriers will try to carry out where possible, is to derate the takeoff. So we planned flaps 5. With the PMDG we can just double click the C of G and it will pop that in there automatically and give us our trim of 4.77 units, which we'll go down and pop in a second. And then we can just accept the V speeds. Now we got from the app slightly different V speeds, but in fact our V2 speed is the same 150, so it's sort of accurate. All I'm looking for really with that app is the selected temperature D rate. And then 4.77 is the trim, so that can go down here. Just below 5 units is the scale we're looking at there. And then we just need to confirm our V2 speed, 150, and then we can set the MCP for departure. So 150 knots is our V2 speed, which we can bug there. From the charts we can see that our initial heading on the Bognor 1 X-ray will be 258, which I think is actually the runway heading, so that's fine. So 258 degrees goes into the heading, which is our initial runway heading. Probably go backwards, that'll be quicker. 258. And our initial climb, in the absence of any instruction from ATC, we weren't given an initial climb in the clearance, so we climbed to the stop altitude published on the chart, which is 6,000 feet. And just confirm that is correct by having a quick look at the chart, which it is. So the MCP we can say is loaded, and we can go ahead and think about setting the aircraft up for a pushback. We've got GSX running. I'm not bothered with any of the loading passengers and that sort of stuff. So we'll go overhead and start the overhead flow. First thing we're going to do is pop a fuel pump on here and start the APU. Get that up and running. And then starting from the top left, just run down the overhead panel so the yaw damper comes on. The rest of the fuel pumps can come on. We've got no fuel in the centre, so they can actually go off. We don't really touch this panel much there, just to confirm that the cabin utility and the passenger seating is on. The standby power is set. The bus transfer switches we'll come to in a second. From the centre, the equipment cooling is normal. The emergency lights are armed and guarded. Refuelling is complete, so we can put the seatbelt signs on. The window heat is on. Probe heat stays off until we push back. Anti-ice not required. Hydraulics actually would have been on. The electric pumps would have been on from the walk around, just to check for any pressurised hydraulic leaks. The air conditioning, we've got the trim air can come on, recirc fans are auto, the packs are auto, the isolation valve is open, all the bleeds are on, and the flight level for our cruise is set now at 350. The lights we've got as required. Doors are currently open, but we can assume that we have finished loading and we can go and close the doors. So you'll see now the APU has come online, and we've got APU power available, so we'll put that on the bus. The bleed is on for the APU, so now we've got electrical and air all being supplied by the APU. So we can go down, close any external doors, and if we go to the ground connections, we can remove the wheel chocks, which will take out all the ground connections, and we're now totally self-sufficient. So all we need to do now is call up ground. We'll just run the I'm using the checklist that I've talked about from Fly UK in previous videos. So we just run the checklist to make sure we haven't missed anything. So we would go from the pre-flight checklist. In fact, there's just a couple of last things to do. I don't think we, just before we go to push, it's just worth double checking that we have entered the transponder code 7717, which we have, and finish off the MCP setup, which just means popping the flight directors on as well, and we've got the auto brake RTA, so we can run the pre-flight checklist and just make sure everything is as we need it. So the parking brake is set, the battery is guard closed, standby power is guard closed, the centre pump's not required, aft pumps are on, APU is on the bus, position lights are steady, the logo light's not required, the emergency exit armed, guard closed, passenger signs are on, packs are auto, RS mode selectors are nav, the FMC is loaded. Transponders set 7717, the MCP is set at 150, 258 and 6,000 feet. The yaw damper is on, the window heating is on, the flight altitude is set 350. The flight directors are on, LNAV, VNAV not required for departure, or not required for pushback. The minimums ref, which is this up here, is Barrow, and the minimums will be our M-frail, the minimum flap retraction altitude. The altitude would climb to before cleaning up the aircraft in the event of an engine failure, and that would be airport elevation plus 1,000 feet. So that's 203 feet plus 1,000, 1,203 feet, and that figure you can see displayed. In fact, I think I'm correct in saying you rounded up to the nearest, so 1,210 feet, and that figure is displayed down here next to the barometric pressure. The minimums are F baro and the minimums are set 1,210. The altimeter is hectopascals, 1014 set once, twice, 3 times. The radios are as we need them. We've got ground and we've got approach tuned on standby. The doors we can confirm are closed, and that is the pre-flight checklist complete. We're ready for the before start checklist. So the auto throttle we can arm. The centre pumps not required. The aft fuel pumps, main fuel pumps are on. The electric hydraulic pumps on. The anti-collision light can go on. The packs can go off because we need the air conditioning off for pressured air to start the engines. And the parking brake is set. We can call for push and start. Go ground, Tomjet 80 Mike, request push and start.
Tomjet 80 Mike, stand 136, start approved.
Push start approved, facing east, Tomjet 180 Mike. So we've been told push and start approved facing east, which means we need to have the nose of the aircraft facing to our left, because obviously we're currently facing south. So we're using GSX, so hopefully, all being well, it should have some data for this stand. Nose left, tail right, and we do not want to start engines before pushback. So let GSX do its thing. Okay, so Gatwick Ground has just announced that he's closing, so whilst we're doing that, we can transfer over to Gatwick Approach, because they are Gatwick Director, because they are the next lowest available station online. So you always work up the chain. So GSX are ready to go. So we're commencing the push and we are cleared to start engine, so we can follow the engine start procedure, starting the number 2 first.
Station 2 and Mike, request push and start, stand 19. We got the clearance from ground earlier.
Station 2 and Mike, stand 19, push stand please, phase 1.
Say again for Virgin 2 and Mike.
Station 2 and Mike, stand 19, push and start approved, phase west.
Push and start approved, facing west, Virgin 2 and Mike.
I've just turned the volume up a little bit in VPilot so I can hear them better, and hopefully you will be able to as well. So that's one good start. And we can start the number 1. And 2. 25% the fuel going on.
2215, Gatwick Director, hello, passengers.
Good afternoon, you're 777 on stand
215, code to Madrid, Northma, 1 X-ray, squawk 2227.
City Madrid, London, 1 X-ray departure, booking 2227, Scuba 2215.
Scuba 2215, correct.
And we've got 2 good starts, so we can do the after start flow. Engine generators on the bus.
Radio check.
Last station, didn't capture call time, but readability 5. Tomjet 415 Yankee, squawk identity climb flight level 170.
I don't even know if I have 170. Gatwick approach Lufthansa 3935, ready to copy Alpha clearance to Frankfurt.
Yeah, getting quite busy here at Gatwick.
935, hello, clear.
I'll just turn down the audio from that side of it, so it's not deafening you quite so much. So we can do the before taxi checklist now. We've pushed back and we've got 2 good engine starts. So from the top of the before taxi checklist, the engine generators 1 and 2 are on bus, the probe heats are on, wing anti-ice is not required, engine anti-ice is not required. The packs are on auto, the isolation valve is auto, the APU bleed is off, the APU is off, the engine start switches are continuous. The flaps 5 required, 5 selected, green light. The elevator trim is set, flight controls are checked, the recall checked and clear, lower display unit is off, and we can call for taxi as soon as they become available. Turn the audio back up on there, so hopefully you'll hear the call.
Lufthansa 3935, correct. Can I have your aircraft type, please?
Airbus 319 for Lufthansa 3935.
Thank you. Thompson 415 Yankee, turn right heading 140 degrees.
140 degrees, Tomjet. 15 Yankee.
So that's 15 Yankee might be easier. Route direct Agmag, climb flight level. What's your cruise? 370.
Just waiting for a gap in the transmissions.
Climb 370, Tomjet. 15 Yankee.
Gatwick Director, good day, Tomjet 80 Mike, just pushed back off stand 136. We've already got a clearance and requesting taxi.
Tomjet 80 Mike, Gatwick Director, good afternoon. Taxi via Kilo Papa Alpha Sierra, hold Alpha 2, short of 265.
Kilo Papa Alpha Sierra and hold Alpha 2 for 26 left, Tomjet 80 Mike. There we go, so we've copied down the taxi instructions that he's given us. Just turn that volume back down a bit so it's not chopping over what I'm saying. Just drag the charts back up quickly and show you where we're going. So it's always important to just verify exactly where you're going. You can use the Simlink feature if you need to, just to get your moving map position up on there. So he's given us the holding point Alpha 2, which is down here for 26 left, and Kilo Papa Alpha Sierra. So we're on Kilo, forward on Kilo, right onto Papa, Papa all the way down, left onto Alpha Sierra, and hold Alpha 2. So you can, if you need to, keep those moving maps up on a separate window or on the iPad, something like that, just so you can see where you're going, because it's very important. Obviously now we're on VATSIM with other people. These are all, this isn't AI traffic, that's all traffic you can see ahead of you there. That is other VATSIM users online. So we want to make sure we get our taxi routing correct, otherwise it can really upset his little plan for how he's going to get everyone to the runway. So we're looking for probably a bit fast, about 10 knots while we're still on the apron. So we've got that Virgin 747 that's just been cleared to taxi as well. He's over in the opposite direction to us, so we just keep an eye on what he's doing. Now we're away, we just want to pop the TCAS, the transponder, onto alt off. So if they've got ground surveillance radar, they can just see what we're up to as we're taxiing. But we're not transmitting any mode C, any height or altitude information, so we don't upset anybody who's on finals or anything like that.
Gatwick Director, hello, Charlie, Sierra Delta Victor, on maintenance area 2. This is flight aircraft 528 with information on board and requesting aircraft 0 to Manchester.
Okay, Charlie, sorry. Can you accept phase 6, January departure, or would you like to know standard departure from that one?
Charlie, Sierra.
Just monitoring that 747 who's taxiing out towards us. He should be coming down on the parallel taxiway.
Echo Charlie Sierra Delta, thank you. It's Marvin Dave, Lambourne 2 X-ray, cleared to Manchester, Lambourne 2 X-ray departure, squawk 5010.
Clear to Manchester via Lambourne 2 X-ray departure, squawk 5010.
Okay, so we're up onto a taxiway now. We can bring a little more power in and get the aircraft moving. Definitely should have put the taxi lights on before we moved, which was a definite mistake there. So runway turn off lights and taxi lights go on before we move. Now we're out onto a taxiway. We can pop the transponder to TAR8, and the pilot flying, or the captain, would have the weather radar data on his side on the EFIS control panel, and the first officer would have terrain and data on his side. I think the pilot flying would also have airports up as well. So So we're looking for the second left here. That was Alpha November on the left. Fire Alpha 226 left, clear for takeoff, Tomjet 80 Mike. So that's nice, he's cleared us straight onto the runway and cleared us directly for takeoff. So we can continue via Alpha 2, which is the taxi routing he gave us, and we can run now the before takeoff checklist. And just do the flow for that quickly. So we've got the fuel flow, which is this switch here. We just reset and make sure that's showing rate. The exterior lights can all go on because we're cleared for takeoff. Taxi lights go off, and the position lights go to steady and strobe. And then we can run the before takeoff checklist. So that's parking brake not set because we're still moving. Fuel flows reset and rate. Centre pumps are on now because we've got a tiny little bit of fuel left in the centre, so it wants us to drain those as well. De-ice is not required. Cabin lighting we can assume is being controlled by the cabin crew. The flight instruments are checked, the engine instruments are checked and verified. Takeoff data is reviewed, no change. Nav equipment is checked, the landing lights are on, strobe lights on, taxi lights are off. Transponder is set, TAI, I've got traffic on my side, and we can start the clock. It's a rolling takeoff, so we're already cleared, we can set 40%. Thrust is set, toga. Takeoff thrust set, airspeed is alive. As rotate.
Clearing to Amsterdam, Clapton for X-ray, squad 405.
Positive rate, gear can come up.
Approach on Stansdorf, it's Mike, gonna make it anyway.
And just following the flight directors. So passing the M-fray, we've got arm. We can put the VNAV and LNAV on. We're still hand flying, but we put VNAV and LNAV in, it will give us the steering cues on the flight director. And that's the axle height. You can see the aircraft now bugged up the upspeed, or just above the upspeed. And commanding us to lower the nose to accelerate. So we can pop command in and confirm we've got N1, LNAV, VNAV speed and command. And the autopilot is in charge. Well, it's not, but it's still flying the aircraft. And then we can follow the flat retraction schedule. And accelerate the aircraft. And we'll just call in. We would normally, if we were on tower, we'd have been handed off to Gatwick Director, but of course we're with Director, so we just need to remember to call him back to say we are airborne. Oh, he's got us. Ident and passing 3-4 at this time. Just asked us for ident, so we just grab the ident button on that. Climb flight level 170, Tonjet 80 Mike. So 170. And there's the ident button there, just flashes up on his radar just to make us obvious and identifiable. So he's cleared us to 170, so we can assume that that is deleting the altitude restrictions. Quickest way to do that in the PMDG, in the 737, is just hit the out intervent button a couple of times and gets rid of any altitude restrictions in the SID. And then commands the aircraft to climb to that cleared altitude there. So he's cleared us to flight level 170. So we're cleared to a flight level, so we can go straight to standard. And then obviously at this point in time, the first officer will be doing the after takeoff flow. So we can just make sure that is all done and then go ahead, do the after takeoff checklist. So we've got gear up and off, auto brakes off, engine start switches off, runway turn off lights off, and the cabin lighting is in the hands of the cabin crew. The pressurization is normal, and we are standard passing 77 for 170. Accelerating the aircraft and just monitoring that it is following the correct path. So there's no London Centre online, so we'll stay with approach now until he hands us off, and that would be, in this case, if there was a centre, he'd hand us off to centre and continue the climb. But for us, that's going to be over to Unicom, and then we just report our intentions on Unicom. So I'll just take through to that point and wait to the handoff so you can hear that call come through. As far as the climb out is concerned, generally don't do much reporting of intentions on the climb out, other than you can just report on Unicom that you're climbing to your flight level. So the next checklist is come up at 10,000 foot, which is here, flight level 100. So we just go to the overhead, verify the pressurization, turn the lights off, and the seatbelt signs can go to auto, and the pre-cruise checks are complete.
Thank you. Line flight level 130.
So that master caution fuel there just means that we've now used the fuel that was in the centre tanks, so the pumps can go off, and we're now just draining fuel from the wing tanks. So I'll expect hand off to Unicom fairly soon because
Echo Charlie, Victor, sorry for the delay, taxi via Tango, runway 08 left, hold short of Papa.
will presently be leaving his airspace.
Taxi via Tango, Juliet, and hold short runway 26 left, Papa, Echo Charlie Sierra Victor.
Echo Delta, 7 line 4, make it easier for both of us. Taxi via Tango, Juliet, there's a left on Juliet, hold short of Papa.
Tango, Juliet, and hold short on Papa, Echo Charlie Sierra Victor. Manchester Airport, good evening, G, Crescent Home, Jet 138, with the 142, the RSN 37, from Crescent Max, yeah, so Crescent Airport, Papa Holker.
Subject 163, Gatwick Director, hello, need to refile as TOM still, not TU, and I have a flight plan from you, I'm afraid, so please refile. Virgin 2 on Mike, squawk head end, report passing altitude.
Squawk head passing altitude 2,300 feet.
Virgin 2 on Mike, thank you, climb flight level 150.
Climb flight level 150, Virgin 2 on Mike. Director, United 236, we've refiled your route.
United 236. Just like, United 236, your flight plan takes you through airspace, but this London bottom line you wouldn't really like, so I'll send you a nice new route through private message.
Director. Director, Tomjet 163.
Delay, Tomjet 82 on Mike, 1 to Unicom 122.8. Good afternoon.
And over to Unicom 122.8. Thanks very much for your service, Tom J. Mike. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, so we're cleared now to over to Unicom because there's no further ATC online covering where we are. So we'll just type in, pop in 122.8 on the COM1, and that goes into the active. You can hear it disconnect from frequency. And now all we're concerned with in vPilot world is the message box here. If we're going to do anything, I mean, at the moment we are at flight level 170 level, which is where he cleared us to. He didn't clear us above that. So what we would do now is, there's no reason not to go all the way to 350. So we could, if we wanted to, if we look at something like VATASTIC or VATSPY, we can check what traffic is around and announce our presence if required. If we may think it's worth announcing that we're climbing up to flight level 350, so I'll probably just put in there where are we? Just departed Gatwick, so you could put Gatwick traffic, so you could put UKK traffic. This is sort of standard. There's no standard format really, but this is kind of the accepted format for doing it. So we're passing. So we're going to say 190 for 350 on the Wagner 1 X-ray, and then that just lets traffic in the area know that we are on our way up to flight level 350. Now we can see from the centre that is available that's online. If we look at, I'll just show you very quickly on VATASTIC. Just drag that across. It's a interrogation, if you like, of the VATSIM world. It shows you the controllers and the aircraft that are online. So this is us, Tomjet 80 Mike. We've just coasted out south of Bognor, and we'll be routing through this airspace. That should pop up with a bit of information about him there, which I presume would be Paris control, Paris radar. It normally would pop up there if you click on a thing, you get a text box that tells you that's us at the moment, that's our routing, that's our current altitude, and so on and so forth. I would anticipate he'll want to talk to us in a second. So what we'll do is we'll set up for that. I may be wrong about this, but we'll set up for it anyway. So he's on 128.1. We'll go down to here, tune on the standby 128.1. Just leave it on standby. And what we'll expect is if he does want to talk to us, then we'll get a text message from him just saying, please contact me on 128.1. And we can go over and have a chat with him. So I'll just follow it through to that point so that you can see what happens when we're contacting en route when we've come from Unicom rather than being handed over. So it all entirely depends on whether he thinks we're going to pass into his airspace and whether he wants to talk to us, which I would imagine he does. So we won't be far off his airspace at the present moment, so he should, if in theory, contact us fairly soon. So the other thing you can do, which is really handy, I'll just show you very quickly. You can double click on a station for information about them. So if you double click on the entry on the left hand side, it will give you the information for the station you've double clicked on. So if we go to this one, which is Paris Control, I think, double click on that and we'll get the ATIS of Paris Control. So we've got Paris Control covering Paris and northeast of France. So in actual fact, we can assume that he's covering the northeast. We may not get a call from him because we are passing west of his airspace. But it's a handy way of checking that out. Also, there's a few ATISs available here. So if you can't get the ATIS for whatever reason on voice on the radio, you can double click it here, and there you go. Information all comes through in text. That's a really handy one. I've been doing a couple of videos. Did a live stream yesterday with Mats, who's a controller from Norway, and there's a couple of things that he wanted me to point out. Just so people were aware, because they don't necessarily always know these things, so that's a really useful one. So yeah, double clicking on here. Also private messaging, if you need to send a private message to a controller or another user, what the format is for that. So if we wanted to message him to see if he was... Oh, there we go. Please contact me 128.10. So we'll do that now. So we're passing 270 for 350. Paris Control, good day, Tomjet 80 Mike, passing flight level 270 for 350.
Thomson 80 Mike, bonjour, climb flight level 350, direct Balan, Bravo, Alpha, Lima, Alpha, November.
Climb 350, direct Balan, Tomjet 80 Mike. So that's nice, he's given us a little shortcut. He's told us we can climb to flight level 350, which is where we were heading anyway, and he's given us direct Balan. So depending on the aircraft you're flying, in the Boeing, the format is to grab the waypoint you want, brings it into the scratch pad, bring it up to the top, which is the active waypoint, and that will go to execute. We can execute that. LNAV is available, VNAV is available. Just turn him down a little bit. So we're direct Balan and climbing flight level 350. So looking ahead, he'll just take us in the cruise down through France, and at some point he'll hand us back to Unicom because there's no one available beyond that. So I'll just show you quickly what I was talking about there, the format for direct messaging. If I wanted to say send a message to him to find out if he was controlling it, I might have sent him a message ahead of time to say, are you controlling west of Paris? Because it's not entirely clear from the text here. It says Paris northeast, so we might say, oh, is that going to cover us? Okay, I'll send him a message ahead of time and find out. So I would just say .msg.message, and then the call sign exactly as it's written, either here or if you're messaging directly to another user, another aircraft, whatever their call sign is. So obviously mine would be Tom 80 Mike. So that would be for him exactly as it's written, with the underscore, then a space, and then type the message. If I type hi and hit enter, that would simply send him a dialog box exactly like that from me that just says I've said hi, and that's the format for doing that. And that would open a new dialog box to whatever call sign you type in there. So that's a really handy way of just sending people direct messages. You can communicate user to user or to other controllers. Just to find out information. You can request text. Normally text isn't they don't look to use text for controllers, just because the idea is to be on voice, but it's there, it's a useful one if you need to use it. Okay, so we're coming up now 310 for 350, so we're nearly in the cruise. The pre-cruise checks are complete, the pressurisation is checked, and normal the air conditioning is set. The seatbelt signs are off, so the cabin crew and the passengers have been released, and there's no further control beyond Paris, so eventually he will hand us back to Unicom. So I guess that is a good spot as any to wrap it up, and see you in the next one. As always, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Keep checking back for more content, and drop me messages. I can be found on Facebook on the VATSIM for beginners page and stuff like that. Anything you want to see or anything that's not clear, just let me know, and I'll do my best to clarify or make a nice new video covering stuff that you want to hear. Take care, guys, and I will see you on the next one.